Bob Chapman spent 3 years in U.S. Army counterintelligence, mostly in Europe. He speaks German and French and is conversant in Spanish. He lived in Europe for 6 years off and on, 3 years in Africa, a year in Canada, and a year in the Bahamas. For more than 40 years, Bob has been writing articles on business, finance, economics, and politics for more than 200 publications. He currently is owner and editor of the International Forecaster, a compendium of information on business, finance, economics, and social and political issues worldwide, which every month reaches 10,000 investors and brokers directly and is picked up by 60 different websites weekly, exposing his ideas to over 10 million people each week. Bob has spoken at or given workshops to over 200 business conferences worldwide. He's been on radio and TV literally hundreds of times. He's been with us before, and God willing, he will be with us again in the future. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the Global Freedom Report, Mr. Bob Chapman. Hi, Bob.
Hi there. It's nice to be back.
Oh, it's a pleasure to hear your voice again, and I'm looking forward to picking your brain over the next half hour or so. I'm curious, by the way, you just heard me ask today's question of the day. And before I get into some of the nuts and bolts of what's happening out there, I'd like to know what you think of that question, in case you didn't hear it all. At what point, if ever, is armed resistance to government justified? Care to tackle it?
Well, first of all, it is justified if it's justifiable. And so the act of acting against government is one of the things that created this nation in the first place, only it was a different government. And the freedom of the people is the most important thing, not the perhaps dictatorial direction that comes from Washington in this case. So if America is in a position where they should have a revolution, then they should have one.
Okay, that's fair. Now, your work in intelligence has given you a distinctive way of viewing the internal politics of the United States and other countries. Taken from that perspective, what ramifications do you expect from what looks like a major Republican victory in the upcoming midterm elections, if the Republicans take control of at least one House of Congress? How do you see the next 2 years proceeding under Obama?
Well, first of all, the president will become a lame duck president. He won't be able to get anything passed. There will be things that will be passed, but not much. And I think the Democrats who presently hold a majority, I think they're well aware of that. And they've been very quiet about the distaste of the public to their antics, just like in the previous election, the people in the Republican Party were pretty silent about the disagreement of the American people about their performance. Otherwise, the Democrats wouldn't have taken over Congress. And so hopefully Republicans have learned something from that. Obviously, the Democrats didn't. They tried to ram through every piece of fascist, socialist legislation that they could. They were successful in the passage of health care reform and financial regulation reform, both bills of which were terrible, terrible disasters. And that's why the American public is going to make sure that they don't continue in power. But it should be noted that there are many in the Republican Party who really shouldn't be there either. They're just as bad as the other guys are. Well, and I've told people to kick the incumbents out.
Yeah.
And especially for the votes that occurred during the last 2 years of the previous administration. With that said, I think that the Democrats will try their best to pass a number of pieces of legislation during the period between November the 3rd and the end of the year in the lame duck session. How successful it will be, I don't know. We'll have to see to the makeup of what the House and the Senate look like, as to whether they can get anything passed at all or whether they can. And
wow,
so
that would be something. If they know they're going to be out of office on January 1st, so they just go out there and pass all these things anyway because they have nothing to lose. That hadn't even occurred to me. I've been there sitting thinking that maybe Obama will try and rule by executive order or something. But you've just brought up a matter of great concern. Bob, I mentioned the possibility that Obama might decide to try and rule by executive order if he doesn't have Democrats controlling the houses of Congress. Do you think that we're in for that maybe over the next couple of years?
Yes, that would begin after January the 2nd. And were he forced to use that approach, he would use it, absolutely. This man doesn't believe in the Constitution or anything else, just like his predecessor. And they just do what they feel like doing.
Yeah, well, it's just a GD piece of paper after all. We won't forget that one.
That's right.
Well, I have one more Obama question. Then I'd actually like to segue over to the economy. But I need to preface this question so everybody understand, firstly, I am not, repeat, not suggesting that anyone do violence to the president. Having said that, when we spoke earlier this year, you and I, Bob, on the show, it appeared politically possible that someone might try to kill Obama, yet he has survived well and intact. Do you still think that is a political possibility, or has he sufficiently entrenched himself to preclude the likelihood of such an incident?
Well, I don't think it has anything to do with entrenching. I think it has to do with the fact that he is going to become a lame duck president. And because he's going to be in that position, no harm, no foul. And I think that he will do what he can do to fulfill the wishes of the people who control him, the same people who control both parties. And I don't think he is in as much danger today as he was before, because he's limited to what he can do. And so I think he'll probably serve out his term, and that'll be the end of that. But it'll be accompanied by great economic and financial disruption and a deteriorating world situation, currencies, the whole works. And you can see this in progress now.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a great segue to my next question. If possible, the U.S. economy seems to be in more of a shambles today than it was when we spoke earlier in the year. Now the Fed is going to solve all of our problems by, wait for it, printing more money. Oh, joy. They call it quantitative easing. What can we expect this injection of new currency will do to the value of the dollar and the cost of goods in America?
Well, first of all, we predicted this 3 months ago, or just short of 3 months ago, and we were the only ones that did. And it has come about, and we knew that they had to do that or the economy will collapse. The Fed has been in the bond market. It's also called the repo market. And they have been injecting money into the system since early June. And the banks which had cut back lending to small and medium-sized businesses, which create 70% of the jobs in our country, they started to try to lend money to those companies, especially the ones with better credit, had very poor results. And the reason why is taxation, the political situation, the dollar, the high unemployment, because real unemployment is 22.75%, not 9.6%. And even the U6 figures from the government are 17.1%. And if you add in the bogus birth-death ratio, you come up with 22.75%. So the economy had to have a boost again. This is the third boost, actually, because the previous administration had small ones, $300 or $400 billion, And then we had in QE1, $868 billion, along with what the Fed spent, which brings it up to $2.5 trillion. And they intend over the next 2 years to spend $5 trillion or more to keep the economy going sideways.
Well, and see,
hopefully
that's
upward a little bit.
That's really the question. Does it, you say, to boost the economy? You know, I think of a booster shot. When you get a booster shot, it's supposed to strengthen your immune system. But is that really what's happening here? Is it really strengthening the immune system, or is it more like getting a shot of morphine, just keeping you high so that you don't see what's going on?
The latter.
I was afraid you'd
The
say
morphine high.
You know,
92% of which is coming from Afghanistan under the auspices of our Central Intelligence Agency and MI6 from England.
well, so, okay, let's go to this quantitative easing thing. First off, I never even heard the term. You know, every year we have new terms that we're supposed to become familiar with, and it seems this year it's quantitative easing. Is this a phrase, is this a term that's been around for a while, or is this something it just created to sell it to the American people?
Just created to sell it to the American people to pull their minds off the increase of money and credit. It's just another euphemism. It's another piece of propaganda, disinformation. People don't know what it is, can't figure out what it is, and that's what they want. They don't want people to understand.
Well, they do a good job of that, that's for sure. So, again, my original question, what should we expect, this injection of more and more Federal Reserve notes, what can we expect that to do to both the value of the dollar, which, who was it who just came out? I think Eric Holder just came out and said, we are not going to devalue the dollar under any circumstances. What can we expect this QE to do to the value of the dollar and to the cost of just ordinary goods in the country?
Well, first of all, he who bespec that was Timothy Geithner.
Thank you. Thank you. It was, yes, thank you.
Treasury Secretary. But that's okay. I do that all the time, too. And the idea is to keep the economy going, and that's going to make the dollar go down. And everybody out there is upset about that. But they don't consider that they've been doing it since the Second World War in order to compete. And the U.S. has told them, you know, if you want a war, you got one. And I think they're going to get one because I don't think anything's going to come out of the G20 meeting in South Korea that's going on right now. In fact, Brazil didn't even attend. They said it's a bunch of gobbledygook. We ain't going there. And so the only thing that the Fed can do is to use an injection together with the administration, whatever they can get, of $2.5 trillion for this coming year. Right. And so, yes, that's going to make the dollar go down. It's also going to make the prices of gold and silver go higher. It's going to increase inflation, and inflation is not 1.6%. Inflation is 7%, and that will take inflation by the end of next year to about 14%.
Wow.
And it's interesting to note that a paper was written in 1988 by Mr. Bernanke and another economist, Mr. Boskin, and they said what is going on now and what they are doing right now with QE2 will not work, which I think is very interesting in as much as the chairman of the Federal Reserve already knows that it doesn't work. Now, you say to yourself, why is he doing that? And the reason he's doing that is they don't have anything else that they can do.
You've got to do
and all they are
something.
Doing
is
extending the timeline, hoping hope against hope they can get another war going.